quite yet.
Oh, we got the infinite screen.
What is up, everyone? This is Deal Flow Live. I am one of your hosts, Brody Vinson.
I am late to parties, but early to dinners, but you can call me Ryan.
This is Ryan Santo, my co-host and host. And we today are doing Deal Flow Live. We do this every week at Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And what we do here on this show is we look at businesses that are for sale online just to go over what our opinion of them is, what we think as far as the value, whether they're over or underpriced, and whether or not we would be interested in a business like this and what kind of buyer they might appeal to. We do this for two reasons: to help people that are trying to buy a business better understand what to look for, and to help people that are trying to sell a business better understand what kind of value they might get in their business, how to communicate it, things like that. And today, Ryan, why don't you tell them what we're looking at?
So we're going to look at some different types of businesses in the cleaning sector, mostly commercial and residential. I'm not focusing on anything more than just keeping mostly houses and places clean, maybe a little bit of other stuff. I had a conversation recently, actually, at an ale house with a friend of mine, and we were trying to watch the LSU and USC game, but we ended up just talking about businesses instead. It does happen.
That sounds like something you would do.
Yeah, it happens. And he doesn't even understand this, but now he's into it. So we were talking about it, and he was explaining that he has a cleaning service that comes to his house and charges $150 for maybe two people for about an hour, a little bit less, actually, 45 minutes, to vacuum and mop the floors. That's it. 3-bed, 2.5 bath, in and out, $150. No dusting, nothing. And he was like, it's insanely expensive. I'm like, those margins must be incredible. And we got to talking about it. And so I started looking this stuff up. I went down a rabbit hole, and I thought this would be a great episode because I'm sure a lot of people have thought about cleaning businesses.
Cleaning businesses are everywhere. If you go online, you can find them pretty easily. And we're going to look at a couple different types of cleaning businesses from what Ryan did with his research. Cleaning businesses in different industries and sectors. And the interesting thing about cleaning businesses, you can start them anywhere. You can clean houses, you can clean commercial locations, you can do duct cleaning. We have a duct cleaning under management in the private equity firm, or you can do just regular cleaning, like mopping and sweeping the floors. Like there's specialized cleaning, basic cleaning. There's all kinds of different cleaning businesses out there. We're going to take a look at a few notable ones here that we've got some pretty strong opinions on.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a very fun episode, and one that I think a lot of people, if they wanted to, could on their own without even having too much effort, start these.
You could start one easily and maybe even buy one to keep running it pretty easily. So let's look at this first one first. This is a dry cleaning business, and you had a very particular reason you chose this one, from what I understand. Is that right, Ryan?
Yeah, I think my email said how not to list a business.
That's exactly what I saw.
Just from the picture, I think we kind of understand it, but I'm just a buyer. Brody, you're a broker as well. So what is your assessment of this?
So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit for those on Instagram. Try to show you a little bit about.
We're going to angle this one.
Yeah, I'll angle it up a little bit, zoom in. It's a little tough to see, but what it says dry cleaning plant that badly needs a family and is cheap in Winter Park. And the picture looks kind of like something out of a horror movie. Terrifier 3 is coming out soon. This kind of looks like a scene from Terrifier.
The dangling arm is what gets me.
Yeah, the dangling arm in the background. The reason Ryan said this is how not to list a business is because you want to present your business in a good light. Someone's not going to pay money for a business that they don't see being a positive addition to whatever they're trying to do. I would also add that, to be honest, this one is, well, I guess when you factor in the FF&E of 65,000, I guess it's not too overpriced, but for a business this size, it would just be difficult to really run this. It would be difficult to make much of any kind of return on something like this, because it's only making $24,000 in cash flow a year. And it might cost that much just to have someone run it.
I mean, imagine working there 40, 50, 60 hours a week and you're only bringing in $24,000 a year. It really doesn't make much sense. From the perspective of the description as I'm going to, I mean, I'll let you always handle the broker thing. I'll look at it like I'm just a regular guy. It's a very emotional plea for help. Like there is a lot of emotion in this write-up. And as an average person, I just want to know the basics of the business, the cash flows, the money, the expenses. Like that's what I'm looking for. That's buried in here amongst just so much language about please, rationalization of what's going on, all this other stuff. It really kind of put me off to it as a whole.
Yeah, the worst thing about this, I would say, and the biggest mistake here, I think, and I see a lot of listings all the time. We put listings up in the brokerage business all the time. Is it's the title itself, the headline here is almost soliciting like charity, like saying badly needs a home, like someone's gonna just buy the business out of like the good of their heart. And I really don't think that's a suitable approach to take here. People don't buy businesses just out of the good of their heart because it badly needs a home. And so I just don't think it's a good way to represent your business. You want to, like I said, you want to be honest with anything you represent your business on, but you don't want to present it in a bad light. It's just kind of marketing principles 101 here.
Yeah, I'm gonna shame on whoever made the listing. I'm gonna say that's a bit of the blame, because who would let their client use that photo as the cover photo? Who would, I mean, as a broker, you know very well, you have to meet your client halfway, but you also have to protect them. You have to kind of tell them what they should and shouldn't put in a listing.
Yeah, and it's pretty standard just to use stock photography on these listings. So the fact that they chose this horror movie photo instead of just a beautiful stock photography. See how long it takes me to find a nice stock photo of a dry cleaner.
Yeah, you don't need to lie about it. I mean, at the very least, you might have just said, hey, let's get a nicer picture of the front and maybe we just clean up the table real quick.
Oh, Voice of Wisdom if I do says, dry cleaning business, I bet the first photo, the first photo that pops up on Google would be a much better photo for this listing. Nice, beautiful photo of a man in a suit handing a dry cleaned piece to this lady. That would be a much better picture for this. It's pretty standard just to use a stock photo on these and not to use the actual business, especially because you're usually trying to maintain some confidentiality on these listings. So this is a grade A example, Ryan, of how not to list a business. It's one of the best examples I've seen.
It's pretty incredible. We're going to have to save this one for posterity.
Yeah. So we won't harp on them too much, but if you're someone who's trying to sell a business, do not do any of that.
If you're looking to bail one out, though, there you go.
Yeah. Now, what do you think of this one? This is a totally different type of business. For those who are just listening along or who are watching, you might not be able to see on Instagram. This is an established dumpster rental business in Orlando for sale.
The dumpster business is very interesting because the more I look into other business, the more I realize how many businesses that we look at that require dumpsters. Whether it's restoration businesses, chucking out all that moldy stuff, or whether it's a construction company or a builder, they're going to need a dumpster. So these guys providing that service, I mean, it's a logistical job. No, so getting trucks to drop these off and pick them up, take them to the dump, come back, but it is fairly straightforward, and it seems like it's not going away. AI is not taking this job.
And that's a great point. We love to look at businesses. I mean, if you were to own a business, you want to own one that withstands market conditions well. We love to look at businesses that have recession resistance as part of the core benefit to them. And something like this, like Ryan said, you're not worried about technology disrupting dumpster rentals. That's just, trash isn't going away anytime soon. Trash is recession proof, as far as I know, unless there's technology I don't know about.
I mean,
what do you think about the pricing of this one, though?
Voice of Wisdom said mentioned that when they're driving in construction sites or renovations, they're on YouTube talking to us that dumpsters are on the side of the road. Yeah, no, that's exactly. I mean, like, especially if you live anywhere where there's doing. I mean, we live in Florida, so there's constant development. We see. Hey, Grant.
What
Grant
did
says
Grant
"smart
say?
dumpster," aka my nickname. Yeah, no, I mean, we live in a really developed area that's constantly building new stuff, and we see dumpsters all the time. So, depending on the location of this business, it would be something that I would consider, especially maybe not a small town dumpster rental, but if you're near a city, this is definitely something I like. And I think they're the asking price is substantial. That's if we're going off of cash flow, they're asking for almost a 4x.
Yeah, just about. They're just a little bit shy. So one thing I was immediately curious about is how many dumpsters do they have,
Mhm.
right? They must own some. It's weird to me that they oh, you know what? Actually, here we go. This is what I was looking for. So current value of assets is estimated 350K.
Mhm.
So to me, actually that brings the value back to home base a little bit. I think that makes it a little bit more reasonable. Still a little bit high, I would say, but it does sound like they have a lot of dumpsters. They've
70.
got 70 dumpsters. So there's a lot of renting that can be done. I would be curious if I was trying to buy this, how like what the utilization of the dumpsters is. Like how often are each of them rented out? It says they'll be provided free and clear of any debt at closing, unless any other arrangements are agreed to. So I think that's cool. Seller will share several ideas for continued growth and expansion. I would be curious about this, the one employee. I would want to know, is that someone that's going to be continuing to run this? And also, what does the owner's current role look like and everything? Are they really
Is this the owner?
is the one employee the owner? If the one employee is the owner, that makes things a little bit difficult because
Oh, yeah.
you're buying a bunch of dumpsters.
Oh, okay. We got another comment. When you buy this dumpster business, would you retain the clients? If so, wouldn't that be added into the 4x selling value, which is why it might be 1 million? You would assume that yes, the business, if they had contracts, you would be taking on the contracts. However, whatever their business, with the nature of this business, one of the things that we like to see is the seller staying on a bit, because they do offer that, to make sure that the people that they frequently do business with, aka their book, knows you and maybe has their blessing essentially that this guy's going to be taking over. I think he's going to keep it on. While yes, a book can be value add, sure. One of the things that we've learned and we've seen is that not every book is as valuable as, just because you have the list of clients doesn't mean they're going to want to work with you maybe in particular. I mean,
A book itself is not that valuable
no, not
because if you were by like I personally wouldn't want to pay much for just a book of business, because let's go worst case scenario for a moment. The doomsday possible scenario is if you were the business owner and you lacked any kind of morals and you wanted to sell your book of business, you could hypothetically sell your book of business to Ryan and then go sell it to me and then go sell it to a bunch of other dumpster rental businesses. And they would just be calling upon those customers and try to steal them. Like Ryan said, having contracts in place is great. Having the owner transition things a little bit is great. Some other comments.
Grant, doomsday is you own a dumpster rental business.
I don't know about that, Grant. These are pretty profitable businesses. I think it could be a good business. I definitely think there's a decent business to be had here. But I would say the client list itself is not something you would want to pay a lot for.
The if you wanted to get that million and they didn't have because the million is really being jumped up by the FF&E.
Grant,
the man has a point.
Grant is here to cause trouble today.
Good luck getting laid. I don't know. Maybe this guy, that's why he's selling it. He has too many people that are there trying to sleep with him or her. But yeah, I agree that, the book itself can be kind of a double-edged sword and it can be a value add. But if it's a business like this where the owner is likely doing the marketing and all the stuff, when they leave, it doesn't mean they're going to want to work with you necessarily. So the fact that we see him staying on, and then we always ask if the owner is willing to stay on for a fee or for a consulting gig, because it's sort of an insurance if the owner's willing to stay on or do a little bit of seller finance, which we did not see listed here.
Yeah, Grant, who's in the chat here tuning along, likes to call this schmuck insurance. It's basically
Good title.
As someone who's buying a business, it's your insurance that things aren't going to just fall apart as soon as the transaction closes.
Yeah, so when we're looking at that 4x value, you'd have to be having, for a 4x, you need to have a lot more business and have to be a lot more expensive, but the book alone is not going to drive it as much as the owner staying on and the actual equipment. But I think when you do that, it's close, but it's more reasonable then.
Now, one strategy I wanted to talk about there that's kind of interesting, something I talked about with a friend of mine. I have a friend that I catch up with every week or two that is buying a few plumbing companies to add to his current plumbing company. He's in the city just north of here.
Oh, nice.
He's in Jacksonville. So he's rolling up a couple plumbing companies. And so we share notes from time to time on like strategy, what we're doing and that kind of thing. And with one of the plumbing companies, they have really just paper records of everything. They've been around for a long time. It's all organic traffic. And so the customer base is really all the value. And so he finds it very valuable. But one strategy that we discussed is a roadshow, is what we called it, is basically asking that as part of the terms of the sale, that the previous owner agreed to basically go introduce him to all of the new clients, clients that, or at least stay on and be willing to make phone introductions or text introductions and give some goodwill and ability to transition. When I sold one of my businesses, our family business that we sold, my sister and I had to do something like this, basically, where we put together a list of all of the vendors and suppliers, then also a list of all the customers. And we sent out email introductions, basically introducing the new owner, talking about the transition, hyping it up a little bit, and just kind of giving our blessing, so to speak. And so I think that's definitely something to ask for when you are selling a business or when you are buying a business, is will they help you make that transition to that level beyond just training? Because if they just train you, like, let's go doomsday again scenario, which you
own a dumpster business. Yeah.
You've always got to consider the doomsday scenario here. And if you bought the business and then had no clients all of a sudden because they just really were there because they liked the previous owner, then you're not going to be able to make your returns back.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that sell books and they sell roots, and that amount you're selling air without any concrete thing. So, Grant had another comment on the schmuck insurance goes both ways. You're a schmuck if I grow the biz and it goes meteoric and you have no equity anymore. That's true.
That's a very good point.
And protects you from getting screwed over as well. And yeah, no, we'll get the paperwork for the trademark for you, Grant. I'll get that started for you. And we'll also get the t-shirts printed. So we'll get those out next week.
And Grant makes a really good point there. So he's saying that the value of staying on with some ownership post-acquisition as someone who's selling their business can be a really big deal too. And I'll use an example from this. A friend of mine, actually one of my previous business partners, did it this way. He sold about 70% of his business and has stayed on since. And it's now been just over a year since that acquisition took place, where he stayed on, sold 70%, kept 30% of his business, less than half of the amount that he sold. That 30% is now already worth way more than his 70% was worth when he sold it in 1 year, just because of who he sold it to and the resources and connections that they had, the knowledge of business and ways that they were able to help grow the business. So as someone who's trying to sell your business, this is something people don't consider often, but you can sell part of your business as a way of getting yourself to the next level and maybe have 2 profitable exits.
Oh, certainly. And I think when you're looking for that buyer, you're looking for that right fit. Sometimes it's a direct fit. Sometimes you're done and you're like, look, here you go, seller finance, make it a little easier on you, but you're just off into the sunset. But if you do have the ability to stay on a little bit and maybe give a bit of, give them that hand, and you find maybe a young startup private equity company that's looking to be very, very generous and very helpful with their resources to you, I think you come out probably getting whatever fractional you maintain might be worth what you originally were trying to get as a whole price in, Obviously, this is green scenario, but you're going to make more if the right person buys it and you keep a little bit on and help them out.
Yeah, and a lot of times, to use the private equity company example, wish I knew one of those. Wink, wink.
Yeah, I wish I did too.
To use that example, a lot of times, whether it's private equity or whether it's a company that's just trying to grow through acquisitions, there are these benefits that arise when you combine companies together. For example, there was an HVAC company that we talked to not too long ago here in town that filled us in on the fact that, and he was just under this at the time that we talked to him, but he was doing a little bit under $250,000 a year in materials cost with his supplier that he works with for all of the work per year. What he shared with us is if you pass that $250,000 a year mark in materials cost, that you unlock a fairly substantial discount from that supplier. So to use that example, there are all these little discounts that can happen. You also might be able to apply, you might be able to apply a strategy where you have like an office manager that manages a couple different companies, or a dispatcher of some kind that manages a couple different companies together, that one company couldn't afford on its own, but multiple companies together can then afford and share resources. So those are the types of strategies that really present themselves when you're talking about, going out and combining a few companies together or something like that.
What a smart thing to do. I feel like there should be at least somebody that's doing that at this point in time that maybe at some point we'll be able to talk more about.
At some point in the future, we will talk more about that.
If only they existed.
They're out there. They're out there.
I'm sure. Like Santa Claus.
Let's move to the next one for now, though.
Oh, that's a big word there. Absentee.
It is. I've seen this one before. This one's been up for a while. I'll start it off with that.
Yeah, we saw this one from the jump when we started.
Mm-hmm. I think it's come down on its asking price.
Yeah.
So I would be curious to know a little bit about the background of that, because it doesn't look like a bad business, and it also looks like it's reasonably priced. It's a little bit low on cash flow, but they're asking for a little bit less than a 2x multiple, which is not unreasonable. I would have to guess, if I did have to guess, I would say that they might not be incredibly flexible on the terms here. But let's look at those a little bit.
The owner financing is fairly generous.
They are asking 7% interest, and they're only financing it over 12 months, though. So that's a little bit, that's a little high, in my opinion. Typically, you see owner financing over at least a couple years, if not 3 to 5 even. Mm-hmm. So only financing it over 12 months, the whole thing, while they are offering a lot of owner financing, it makes it a little tough. This basically means your
cash flow is you're
not making money the first or the second year. So it's about a 3-year payback period if you don't grow it, that is.
This is one where I think you have like you said, the law of time, where it's been around for a while. I mean, maybe not the business. It just hits our like 5-year bare minimum mark. Mm-hmm. I think this would be one where calling it up, and it feels like this is a broker case, if I'm correct. So perhaps with this one, you might be able to get those terms extended out a bit, because, if we're a serious buyer and you want to move on it, give us a little bit of leeway. Or why is it only 12 months? Ask the why and see if you can get an answer of like, okay, well, what can I do to make this easier on both of us? What do you need right now? Because that's also the question that we want to know. Only 2 weeks of training, which I guess if they're claiming absentee, it may be enough, but I would certainly want to know more about how this, how do you make sure the employees are showing up to the job sites? How are you getting your jobs with contracts? Like, there's a lot to this thing that I want to understand, but they don't really give us too much.
I thought this was an interesting term too. I've never seen this
owner
before.
Apartheid. Yeah,
it's a weird term. I get what they're going for there and what it means, but I just thought it was odd.
I feel like I've only heard like people from older generations use that term. Mm-hmm. So definitely probably a gentleman or a lady who's been in the business a longer than probably from a different time.
It's giving problematic deep south.
Yeah. Many of the great qualities include a large pool of subcontract. Okay, so they subcontract a lot of work. So that's how they're outsourcing it, which I think this could be a business that if you were able to secure the loan of basically $250,000,
Yep, just under.
you could jump into this and really you could do a lot, especially if you were not owner absentee. If you really worked on this and you have subcontractors and you're actively going out and sourcing work, if you have any connections to construction spaces or commercial.
Does it say they only subcontract?
A large pool of subcontracts.
Interesting.
To complete work all over Central Florida.
Yeah, I'd be curious if they're specifically only doing subcontracting. Because if they are, then
changes things.
Yeah, that's a fairly attractive business in that case, because I believe the owner absentee a little bit more. If you've just got someone that's trained on like who all the contacts are, how to subcontract out certain things, how to get the jobs, and if they've got good marketing systems in place, I start to find that a little bit more reasonable.
Yeah.
Grant,
that's horrible marketing. Yes, Grant. It's pretty horrible marketing. I mean, the type of, there's certain people that we know that if we gave them the keys to this car, they'd probably be doing a mill top line within a year.
Yeah.
I think Grant could probably knock this thing to a mill just by doing it for 6 months. Because if you have that ability to just pound the pavement and market this and get out in front of people and tell them about this, everybody needs cleaning. There's probably never enough cleaning. I'm sure that this is just simply somebody who's just like really kind of over the whole thing, made their money and is done. So I think if you got to get up and go and maybe even a couple hands into that arena, you got yourself a pretty good recipe over here.
Yeah, this is one I actually might want to explore more now that I've done a deep dive on it, because I didn't catch that on my first few look throughs of this business. The fact that it's literally just subcontracting. I think the key here would be that you get the owner to stay on with a little bit, right? Because you don't want to completely lose that contract base. It looks like we got a comment.
Let's say, heck yeah.
So someone said on Instagram, says, how do you scale a business like that? I'm working in a firm like this, and it's a pain in the ass to sometimes work with subcontractors because they're so unreliable oftentimes. That's a really good question. I would probably ask that if I was trying to buy this business. I would probably try to ask about like the reliability of the subcontractors. But I think the only way to scale it, in my opinion, is be really strict on who you do and do not subcontract it out to. I think you'd want to do a lot of research on reviews and try to talk to some of these subcontractors a little bit. And, this is just me speculating because I haven't run a business like this. But from the people that I've talked to who do that type of thing, I think it's just maintaining good relationships with the subcontractors, but also being very choosy about who you do and do not contract it out to. What do you think, Ryan?
Grant says he'd sell the shit out of that, and I believe him. I believe him wholeheartedly. We actually have the man's a genie. Yeah. So great question, great comment. Clearly somebody who has industry experience, and I think anybody who's ever hired a contractor or anything like that understands that. Maybe then they say they'll be there at 12 and they're there at 3, time is fluid for them. And I get the frustrations because, I've known my dad's a couple of friends who are builders, God bless them. Yeah, it's very difficult. We have a friend of ours named Joel who works in an industry adjacent to this and kind of similar. And he is a very well-respected person, has risen fairly highly in his companies because he's very good at negotiating with contractors, getting them to show up on time and be where they at. But he also, I believe, he has a large pool of them. So if somebody isn't doing the job, he has another person to pull in to take that. So I think when you're growing this business, you're doing the hard work of dealing with subcontractors, like you said. That is the toughest part is people. That's for most businesses, I'd say people are the toughest aspect of it. Diversify your subcontracting network as much as possible. Get as many of them, working with you as you can, and make sure that if somebody's just not doing it, maybe you just don't call them up for a while. It's nothing personal, but like you can't have that on your reputation. You're working your butt off scaling this thing. So there's probably somebody who's younger, hungrier, who's going to start their own subcontracting company. Get them on the jobs. They'll be there first, I'm sure. So I think really diversifying your people is going to be where you find the most success and you find the hungriest subcontractors, wherever you're at.
Yeah, and I think being very upfront and open about your standards ahead of time. It's the same principles as if you were managing like a group of people. Oh yeah, we've got another comment.
I think it might be maybe a continuation.
Oh yeah. He said, he or she says, well, I'm based in Germany and many subcontractors are like employees that thought business is easy and you can make a lot of money.
Oh,
so
wow.
It sounds like you're saying they have kind of an employee's mindset, and maybe they're hoping that being in business for themselves, they're very attracted to the upside of it, but are not down for the downside.
Mm-hmm.
So someone that I talked to about management really deeply one time shared something that I think might be beneficial here. So I think if you communicate the long-term detriments of what they're doing to them really well, that might be able to help a little bit. So a lot of times people with that employee mindset don't really think in as long of a time horizon as people with the ownership mindset. And so if they are a little bit late, like Ryan was talking about one day, they don't necessarily think about how that could affect the reputation of what's going on. I think if you can try to communicate how the reputation of their business will be affected and communicate that, hey, if you are late to this and if you don't show up on time, if you do this or this or this, if you don't really take that extra special care, I'm not going to be able to call on you anymore. And also that's going to be the case for anyone that's subcontracting you. I think if you try to communicate that, the long-term effects of that, it could help them see the light a little bit.
For sure. I think also Joel would actually be a great guest on the podcast to talk about this topic more at some point. Whoever this is, definitely drop a follow and on Brody, and we'll make sure we do an episode about something, maybe almost all about this.
And they're also asking, someone else is asking, can you speak about what are the companies to start today that would be interesting to private equity and a 3 or 5 year exit from now? Is HVAC played out with the roll-up game already?
Do you want to take this one, bud?
I'll take this one. I don't think HVAC is played out at all yet. There's definitely competition out there for it. So you're up against some competition when you're looking for HVAC companies. But actually, the first company that we brought under management on our blue collar sector is in the HVAC space. And one of the things about HVAC that's really great, a few things. The first thing I'll say is that because it's specialized labor and it requires a license, a lot of times you're dealing with employees that take things a little bit more seriously. They have obviously put in time for the education behind what they're doing. So you've got like potentially a little bit more steady labor base there, which is attractive. The big thing that private equity loves about HVAC, and is something that we're working on with our company that we work with right now, is they love to see recurring revenue. And the cool thing about HVAC, amongst all these different home services that makes it so attractive, is that a lot of times you can get HVAC customers onto a maintenance plan where they pay a monthly or yearly, ideally monthly, sometimes annual, but they pay a monthly fee for a certain amount of service every year. So for example, maybe they pay $50 a month or something, and they get a certain amount of duct cleaning every like couple times a year or once a year. They get checks, like one that we talked to that had 300 customers on maintenance contracts. Basically what they would do is they would do a maintenance check twice a year and just check in on little things with the AC systems to make sure that they weren't going to have big problems. And the reason that's so attractive is that, especially here in Florida, ACs have issues all the time. And if you're checking in and doing little maintenance prevention measures, then maintenance measures, you're dealing more with prevention of issues versus what happens if you let the issue go wrong. And you could be dealing with like massive replacement costs, huge equipment costs, and lots of labor if you do wait for things to go wrong. And so these companies that are able to communicate that effectively and be able to get previous clients that they did right by and had good experiences by, if they get them on maintenance contracts, then what private equity sees when they look to potentially purchase something like that is consistency of revenue. They don't see these big spikes and everything. They see that, okay, like if this company has 300 maintenance customers on lock, then it's reasonable to say that a lot of them will probably continue, and we can expect a certain amount of profit from this business, and it de-risks things a little bit.
Yeah, I would say, and beautifully put, Brody, as always. I think when you're thinking about, is it played out? Is there too much? One of the things that we figured out pretty early on in our decisions of what we would and would not buy was not only could technology take this job, was always one. Secondly, was how do we in our day-to-day utilize this service, or how are we affected by it? So with electrical, plumbing, HVAC, your trades essentially, we all thought about, what if one of those things that we use stops working? How does it affect us? We want the fastest solution possible at the best price. So there's never going to be enough HVAC. There's never going to be enough electrical, because odds are, if the guys are booked, they'll call the next person who's available. And if that's you, you just did it. And if you do it well and they like you and you have a friend, like the guys the one that you just brought into the fund, they're the nicest, most pleasant, most wonderful people to bring to your home. They got a cute little mascot they leave. If I had a different person, these are my new people, because they had the experience, they came, they were clear. Like, just that bit of customer service will be the difference between you and the guy down the street. And also, just because there's a dozen HVAC companies doesn't mean there's a dozen great HVAC companies.
A very easy test for this in really any type of home service is if you're trying to do some competitor research. Let's say, for the person that asked about the HVAC companies, if you were looking to start one versus buy one, if you were let's say you're in Tampa, Florida, and you're thinking about starting one, if you were to do a search of your specific area for like HVAC companies near me, and you go and you try to call like the top 5 or 10 of them, and a lot of them don't even pick up the phone, you should definitely start one, because that means that, like, you tried calling it and other people are trying calling it, and if they're not picking up the phone for everyone, that means that there are missed opportunities.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. No, you are not in a wrong place trying to build that business.
And they asked a follow-up question, which is, what other businesses are on private equity's radar? A lot of things. It's a broad question. I would say, for us specifically, for the firm that we're building, we're looking at home services because there's a lot of benefits to them. But going back to what I was talking about with the HVAC company, rather than the industries themselves, I would focus more on the principles within the business. So private equity is attracted to anything that has stable recurring revenue. If you have contracts in place in some form or fashion in your business, that's very attractive. If you are removed from the business, if you're the type of business that doesn't rely on the owner too much, that's very attractive. If you are invested in the continued success of it and can kind of be able to continue advising on it after an acquisition, that's attractive. I would say the principles of that are more attractive than anything. What I always say to someone that's thinking about selling their business too, or trying to prepare it to be for sale, is if you can think in terms of being the buyer yourself and what kinds of things would make you feel better about investing in a business with your money and like it was going to continue to be successful. Those are the same types of things that private equity will look at. And aside from that, just they're looking for sustained growth year over year and consistent profitability and cash flow.
Heck, if you start a carpet cleaning service and you just get you get a bunch of residential and commercial people just doing carpet cleanings, somebody buy that. There's an equity company that would buy that, no problem, because carpets aren't disappearing.
Yeah, they like things that are de-risked, but there's all kinds of different specialties. Like there are private equity companies that, like I talked to a guy today with a road striping company out of Texas.
After.
Yeah, well, I'll update you on that. It was a cool
I also have one too.
Okay,
yeah.
Nice. So I talked to a guy today with a road striping company where they do a lot of work with government contracts. And he told me that they had talked to a couple other private equity companies already that actually reached out to them. And one of them was actually one that specifically buys nothing but road striping companies. So you can have all kinds of specialties. A lot of people will get into private equity because they have really strong industry expertise in a particular area. Like that example that I just gave, the road striping was probably just some people that had strong expertise in it and wanted to build a portfolio of that. And to your question about should you start a company or buy one and scale it, that's a tough question, and that depends on your situation. I would say if you can figure out a way to do it financially, then it's probably better to buy one and scale as long as you're being really smart about the buy. The difficult thing is that in business, it's really expensive to acquire customers. It's expensive and it's difficult. So if you can buy a business that already has customers, then they've already gone through a lot of the expensive stuff and the difficulty of acquiring those customers, and you don't have to deal with that quite as much. Being a startup is really difficult in that sense. You have to spend a lot of money to figure out how to mark your lane in the industry. That can take a lot of time as well. So I would definitely recommend, if you can figure out how to do it through either SBA financing or going out and getting an investor or something like that, that it's a lot easier to buy a business as long as you're doing it at a reasonable price and then scale it from there.
Yeah, I think it's a three-pronged thing. One, do you have a passion for what you're looking to buy? As in, like, do you feel like your life's calling is HVAC? Well, then maybe you should actually go get HVAC certified, become a technician, and start your own HVAC business. Do you just like the HVAC business? Well, maybe you work for an HVAC company and kind of earn the reputation, and maybe you convince the owner they should do an acquisition and you should be a part of it. Or, like you said, you go the more business buyer route. You find one, you source it, you get the deal done, whether that's investors or personal capital or a loan, and you just make sure that you have the cash left over to keep on an operator, or have the owner stay on for X amount of time while you kind of transition it onto your hands. So it's a matter of time value of money. I mean, if you go and want to work in these industries, not everything is going to be whatever, maybe less than what you're making now. And you can't expect that to transition over, which is something that sometimes people don't really, is definitely a barrier to entry to changing into this lane. But also, when it comes to just deciding the business, I mean, I would say look around when you're driving, when you're walking, what things do you see? And then just kind of think about, how did that get here? Like barriers on the side of the road for construction. You hate them. They're annoying. Somebody's getting paid to put them there. And like the road striping business, that sounds really boring. But
Great.
They're all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Boring is your best bet. And a lot of people say it, but I think it's important to realize that when you look around, just the dull things, the dull things in life, somebody's being paid to produce or to show up with. So always consider that. Like when you see Bob's Barricades blocking off 4 lanes of the traffic on a 5-lane highway, and you're like, curse you, Bob. You're making a mint right now. I know it, but I'm going to be sitting here for an hour staring at your signs.
Whoever actual Bob is behind Bob's
Genius.
Barricades, dude is racked out, I'm sure. So let's move on to our final business here. We've got a commercial cleaning services business.
I love this one.
This one's wait, am I reading this right?
Yeah, you are.
What's going on here?
So this one is unique.
Why don't we have an offer out on this already?
It's because I think,
for those of you who are looking on Instagram and maybe can't see it all the way, I'm going to try to zoom in here, but if you still can't see it, this business is cash flowing $660,000 a year. They're only asking for $269,000 for it.
I don't touch nothing with 666 in it. So
it doesn't quite have that.
It is weird that it has such a negative multiple, essentially. It's not a franchise, because that's usually an indication of a franchise is if the cash flow is higher than the price. There's normally a franchise involved, just because there's a lot of rules and red tape for selling a franchise, which franchises are great businesses to buy within certain areas, but the sale of them and the operation of them, you are going to be kind of handcuffed to the overarching entity's rules and regulations. I like this business because I understand this business, having restaurant experience and having experience in commercial facilities like warehouses and stuff. This sort of cleaning and renewable source is very important. And yeah, you do have to pay big bucks for this because otherwise, fire.
This is, I have to be honest, this is still giving me like sneaky franchise vibes. I don't know.
You think so?
A little bit. The red flags I'm seeing are they're basically like selling you on the way the business operates. Like whenever they're overselling on that, it kind of says potential franchise to me. Like they're really selling the need for the business more so, versus saying we have a stable customer base. They're talking about the technology behind it. To me, it definitely sounds like
okay. I see where you're coming from.
But they also say 8 employees. It could be that they're saying they project that with this level, like they project they'll get you to this level, and that it would take that many employees.
Grant's saying something's wrong, so something is wrong. Wait, hold on. Chase your dreams. Go click on them. Hold on. I think we might have caught him. Yeah. Chase your dreams. Click on that.
Yeah,
Always
I think
check the broker.
I've seen them before,
Chasing
and I think
your dreams. My mistake. Vending machine, mobile pet business, which is not necessarily that one is probably an individual one.
I mean, that might be their. See, whenever it says,
I've seen them
whenever
before.
It starts with become the owner of, there's like these little buzzword phrases that signal franchise opportunities to me.
Yeah, I've just seen brokers write like that too. I feel like that's kind of a broker language thing.
That could just be their MO that they put them all up that way.
It sounds like they use ChatGPT to write their stuff.
It definitely does. And it might just be that. I mean, maybe I'm being superstitious here, but it seems just vague enough to throw me off. It's a little bit odd that they don't have a picture included.
It's one where I just want to talk to them because in that conversation, it'll be very clear in the first 30 seconds whether or not it's a franchise. But I like the recurring revenue streams that they talk about here, where they're talking about the vent cleanings, that sort of stuff, because that's an industry where it's going to be needed. Fire stuff, I mean,
there's nothing wrong with franchises. It's really like it's dependent on, how established it is, how much support they give, and that kind of thing.
And like I said, it's a good business model for people. It's just that if you're trying to grow and then possibly sell, you're probably not going to do it the way you want to because you're beholden to a higher entity, the company itself. But if this is real, let's go with let's put the rose-colored glasses on here. If somebody said, "Hey, for $270,000, this franchise that's bringing in $660 can be yours," and it's real and it actually is, okay, yeah, I'm a franchise owner now. Forget it. Yep. All right. See you guys later.
That would be a good deal.
But I think what got me is that's an underutilized service that I think people overlook is hood cleanings for this sort of cleaning is so niche and needed. People forget it even exists.
When they say, okay, so oven hood cleaning. Yes. Yeah, that's something I wouldn't have even thought of.
Because all the restaurants have to do it quarterly.
Yeah, that's basically their big selling point they're saying here is that it's a compliance thing. State laws mandate regular cleaning, ensuring a consistent demand for our services. So, I mean, I wonder how many businesses like this are out there. Like, I guess they probably do really well now that I think about it. Like, do we have a comment?
Are we cleaning up the hood? Yes, Grant, we are cleaning up the hood.
Grant is on one today. I love it.
I love it.
So, I mean, altogether, kind of rounds out the conversation that we looked at one that might be a franchise. Like the franchise itself, I think I've come around on them a little bit more. I had a little bit of a stronger opinion on them early on when we started this show, but I think it really depends on what the situation with the franchise is, whether it's a good opportunity or not.
Yeah, I think it's also dependent on the person. And franchises can, in many cases, be cheaper to get into.
Like this one.
Yeah, I mean, even just like a cleaning franchise or certain other franchises, you can have a lesser of an upfront cost to develop it. You have to put in, you're never going to be, or rarely are you going to be absentee from a franchise because the requirements. But it might be a great way to get yourself out of wherever you are into something new and different, and give you a better cash flow if you want to work at something. But sometimes just looking at these, you can see a business model that maybe you hadn't considered before, you forgot about, like duct cleaning and oven and hood cleaning. They go kind of hand in hand. You get that fire certification training, you've now really cracked open a very lucrative, larger scale of business than you probably thought initially.
And that's a really great point. If you are someone who's looking to start your own business and you don't really want to go the route of taking on an SBA loan, you don't have any capital, for whatever reason, you don't want to go find an investor of any kind, and you want to get to something like this could be a really great way, to Ryan's point, to figure out where to mark your spot. Just reading up on a lot of these like franchise listings that they have, it does give you a really good idea of a business model that you might not have known. Like neither of us knew about this business model. It's just like there's so many of these businesses that you don't even think about and that are kind of buried under the surface. Money moves in ways that are mysterious and unknown. And you can make money cleaning restaurants' oven hoods.
We talk about deals on here. We love doing our deal flows. We like trying to figure out the best businesses to buy and, what we like to see. But at the end of the day, we're just pro business. Like we're pro small business and medium business a lot. If you have a large business, we'll be friends with you too. But we just like people getting into their own business and having that ownership. And we really want people who watch this show to see that there's multiple options and there are ways to achieve it. And we're here to help in any way that we can.
Yeah. And we do this show every Tuesday night, right around 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We talk about businesses that are listed for sale. Looks like you've got another comment to comment on.
You can just, yep.
Grant's quoting me. But
so dumb.
I know. I didn't think about
didn't hit me
that
till I wrote it.
I know. I'll put it up on the screen for those who are just watching along.
God, we're gonna have so many t-shirts.
But until next week, this has been Deal Flow Live. My name is Brody Vinson.
My name is Ryan Santo. And Brody, where can they find you? And what if they want to talk more with you and possibly even work with you?
Yeah, well, you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok, pretty much Facebook, if I didn't mention that. Pretty much anywhere. Get in touch with me. Send me a message about what you're trying to do, what you're interested in. Ryan, where can they find you?
Right now, just on LinkedIn. It's Ryan Santo on LinkedIn. But soon I'm going to be actually making an Instagram page, getting some content out there for everybody because, Brody told me, hey, what are you doing? Make content because you might actually have something to say. So be doing that soon.
Absolutely. And if you are someone who's been following any of my content where I'm working with people like Ryan on the private equity fund, and you've thought about
Grant, so there's some funny stuff.
And Grant, who's in the comments, being a little bit of a troll here, always having fun. If you're someone who's thinking about getting involved with the fund, you can find that at the link in my bio. All the information there. There's a little write up on what we're doing and how you can get involved. And until next time, we've got some really cool plans. Ryan, you want to tell them about that a little bit?
Oh my God. Yeah, we got guests. We're getting some really cool guests coming on. We're reaching out to people. We got a friend of the show, and Bill is going to come on here. You guys will meet Bill in October. He's a really cool guy. He's got some really cool investment plans. He's had quite a career, both in corporate America and as an investor and business owner, with him and his wife having done the Roland Frazier event that we went to. Tremendous job there. And a professor of ours that we had at our MBA program is coming on, Dr. Tim O'Brien, a tremendous person in the space, probably one of the hardest working people we've ever met. And
he's a doctor and a business owner.
Yeah. And he worked, I think he was teaching us, and also he was at another college. He was doing 2 college courses per semester, like 2 different courses he was teaching. So
while also running a business.
And running business, yeah. And we've got a couple others. We might be having a friend of the show from our favorite program that we use, Resquared. Check it out. We might have a friend of the show and a couple other guests who are doing very cool things in their own industries. So stay tuned. We're going to have a lot of knowledge coming through here.
Yes, sir. Until next time, this has been Deal Flow Live. See you next week.
See ya. Go Gators.
All right.